This Aces of Bases edition on the College Baseball Experience and Breaking Bet Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. You can win up to 100 times your entry with Underdog Fantasy Pick'em. Sign up today with promo code TCESGPN to claim your special pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code TCESGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get the best data-driven props and picks from Rhythm. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And it is showtime here once again on Aces of Bases, the recap show brought to you by some of your favorite college baseball content creators in the gambling space over there on Twitter currently. I'm your host today, Noah Bieniek, aka 77. Joined by me today is Johnny Venezia. Personally, Johnny, I chose the worst weekend of the season to have my worst weekend of the season. How did you do, my friend?
Wasn't that great for me. Lost a few units between futures and plays. Did a little bit better on the futures, even though, OK State and LSU found a way to melt down in the big moment. That probably would have put it north of 5 units for the weekend on that front. But plays, on the wrong side of a few choke jobs, ended up getting beat up over 5 units in the games. It wasn't particularly good this weekend. Wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good. It was, I would say, on the side of bad. But you know what, man? We got a lot more time left in this sport. I think the both of us had pretty good years, to say the least. And there's a lot of time to make up for it, man. Super Regionals, Omaha. And you know what? Obviously, there's time to get it back. But I think now the Super Regionals become not only a great weekend to bounce back, Noah, but it now becomes a much easier week to handicap because it takes the guessing out of who's pitching. You have an idea of how the bullpens are ready to go. A team's not playing 2 or potentially 3 different teams in one weekend. You're not having to play 4 games. It's winner take all 3. It's a regular weekend series here in the Super Regionals.
Yeah, I hope it's a bounce back weekend. And yeah, all the points that you make total sense. You're not handicapping 32 games in a day. You're only handicapping 8. So that all makes sense in theory. You're only handicapping 16, I should say. That all makes sense in theory. No, 8. We're 16 teams handicapping 8 games. Jesus, my math. But yeah, like we had said, the handicapping game by game, I didn't change anything that I've done the entire season long. Just the slates were a little bit bigger. I'd love to be the guy that just chalks it up to variance, but when you had as bad of a week as I did, that's not the case. The regionals are okay. My bracket's great, other than Arkansas being in my final, but I do have 10 or 11 teams. I have 10 because LSU got bounced. So I only missed 6 advancing out of regionals. So it's not the end of the world when it comes to bracket pools. But Johnny, today we are going to recap some of the regionals, talk about some of the biggest storylines in our sport entering super regionals. No bigger game today on game 7 with, the regional finals happening on Monday than that Chapel Hill regional. That was the most exciting regional, brought suspense and drama in every single one of those games. You look at it on Friday, we almost had the 4-seed Long Island beat up North Carolina until North Carolina comes back and wins it off on a walk-off grand slam. LSU hits a walk-off bomb against Wofford. Every game in this regional, even the Wofford Long Island 3-4 matchup in the loser bracket brought the heat. North Carolina emerges. They were trailing entering the 9th inning against LSU here, and they were able to muster up the run. Your thoughts? You had a tweet that is garnering a lot of action, a lot of attention on Twitter. about the situation late in the game, mainly a coaching decision, right, Johnny? So your thoughts on this Chapel Hill regional?
I mean, first off, the region was fantastic. It lived up to the billing. There was drama in just about every game. And, if you weren't betting on it, if you're watching this just as a pure fan, somebody that enjoys this time of year in this sport, then this is the game for you. Really, it was a pitching duel from basically the fourth inning to the end of the eighth. And LSU was in control for 90% of this game. And, 3-2, it ended up being a fantastic finish. Obviously, I'm on the wrong side of that. LSU was in my bracket. LSU was a team I had a ticket on that I took last week. And LSU was a team that I just picked to win the region. So, congrats to North Carolina. They were the better team. They found a way to make the big play and not make the big mistake in the big moment. And that's what winning teams do. So let me address the elephant in the room. And I don't regret what I said. I don't take it back. I think what I said is true. Jay Johnson is one of the best head coaches, maybe the best head coach in the entire sport of college baseball. I was out with my boy PJ Glasser this afternoon on BetQL, and I said, watch out for LSU. If they can get past UNC today, they are going to be a nightmare. Nobody wants to face them. Everybody's going to be afraid. I felt like they had a really good path to get to the Final Four if they got past UNC. And I said, there is no coach I want in this situation over Jay Johnson. As soon as I say that, he does something I do not agree with. Jay Johnson had one of his key relievers, Nate Ackenhausen, who, okay, fine, he hasn't had a good year. He got beat up, I think, yesterday in a start. But Nate Ackenhausen has been fantastic in these relief. I'm wearing a Tampa shirt, baby. I'm wearing it all day. Nate Ackenhausen has been fantastic over the last year to 2 years in the key relief situations. This is what this guy is brought in for. He has been a guy that has been able to get the big outs when they matter. And he was doing really well in the situation to get through the eighth inning. You're up 3-2 going into the top of the ninth to close it out to go to the Super Regional. You're facing one of the best offenses in the country. You pull Nate Ackenhausen, right? The guy who has gotten key outs for you, especially last year in the championship run. This year, he's been hit or miss. But at the end of the day, the stats go out the window, Noah. You got to have your guys that have gotten you there time and time again. And I felt like Nate Ackenhausen deserved a shot to go out for the ninth. And if you know what, he lets the first batter on, okay, then you maybe pull him. But here's what I don't like. Jay Johnson opts to go for his Friday guy, Gage Jump. Gage Jump has had a fantastic year, especially in the second half. He's looked awesome. But Jump, coming off Tommy John surgery, who threw 100 pitches on Friday, comes in here in a spot he is not familiar with the game on the line. He's coming in as a closer. The starter versus the closer is two different mentalities. It's two different logistics. It's two different pitching styles. It is not a role he's used to. So let's disregard the 100 pitches he threw 3 days ago. And let's focus on the fact that you're throwing a guy who is not used to this situation when you have guys that have delivered for this program. Okay,
can I ask you a question, Johnny?
Yeah.
So if it works out, if Gage Jump gets in there, goes 1, 2, 3, kind of like that Derek Clark did for West Virginia, is Jay Johnson receiving praise?
He would receive praise. And you know what? I think it worked out. I personally still wouldn't have done it. I'm not necessarily basing my opinion on the outcome of the game. It's magnified because of the outcome. If that worked, I'd be like, listen, I think it was the wrong decision, but that's why he's the coach and I'm not. It worked out. And I'm glad it would have worked out. But now here's the thing, like, okay, fine. You want to try and start Gage Jump and see if you can get a couple outs and close this game out and he's the hero. Okay. But, he starts letting guys on base. And then a Colby Wilkerson, the 9-hitter, who has had little to no success, who is the weak link in the UNC offense. He has him 0-2, and he throws him like 7 straight fastballs. And, in all fairness, he threw an up-and-in fastball that Wilkerson got jammed on. He was just able to muscle out. But the point is, like, That point on, he ties the game. You still have a guy like Gavin Guidry in the pen who, yeah, he threw 40 pitches yesterday, but it sounds like Jay Johnson was disregarding pitch counts. And even though Gavin Guidry threw 40 pitches yesterday, I still think he would have been capable of coming and throw 15, 20 pitches today. Season on the line and all. And then he jump allows the tying run to score in the top of the ninth. Then you don't get the walk-off in the bottom. Then he starts him back out there.
Yeah, I was surprised that he trotted him back out for the extra innings.
And listen, Jump didn't look bad, but he did not look like the guy that we've seen in the second half.
I mean, he was still bringing in 97. So
I know, but the location wasn't as crisp. The off speed, the slider wasn't looking as good as it normally does. And it's rightfully so. This is a guy who at this point in the night is working on 135 pitches this weekend. Like, you have other guys, and I just don't know. Like, if you want to try him for the ninth, fine. He blows the game. But
you got to get
somebody else a shot in the 10th.
Correct.
And then I said it right as it was happening. I didn't tweet it out. I said it to myself. When Madera was up with guys on base, I said, don't let him pitch to this guy. This kid is a little pest. I did not like the matchup. I don't care if it was lefty-lefty. I was not a fan of it. And ultimately, Jump delivers the go-ahead hit to Madera. I would have at least had somebody else in for the next inning, for the top of the 10th.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big decision, and Jay Johnson has earned the right to be able to make those type of decisions, especially after the year that they had last year. I just can't wait until I go and watch this press conference post game here and see what his mentality, his attitude is after. Because, I mean, man, when you're talking about shift in personality, he is on top of the world when he wins, and he is like one of the, worst people to kind of get a truthful answer out of after a tough loss. I mean, in the College World Series last year, like just a brick wall, not giving anything. But after they were winning some games, he's like, yeah, we had mapped out this entire situation of who's going to throw. Well, I mean, if you map this entire thing out with Gage Jump going in the ninth and it doesn't work, does he take the hit, or what does he say? I'm really interested to hear that post game here. Before we jump into the
hold on, one more thing. I just wanted to add, last thing. Had LSU walked it off in the bottom of the 10th day and Jump throws 50 pitches, now what do you win? Now what do you do next week in the Supers? Do you move Holman up?
You would probably hold. Yeah.
Obviously, you don't know if they're going to play Friday or Saturday. Given how it's a late Monday night game, you'd think they would get the Saturday game, but now you switch up your rotation and you're throwing Holman game one, which is fine. He's thrown game ones this year, but I don't know. Now you have Jump throwing 150 pitches in a few days span, and then he's got to come out and say throw the next game. I personally just didn't agree with it.
Yep. I mean, it makes sense from a baseball mind. If you're thinking about it, 101 pitches on Friday, coming back and throwing another 50. We saw that with Quinn Matthews in the regional two years ago, throwing a 156 pitch outing after whatever he did on Friday, like 50 or something like that. Like, he's going to probably not pitch until that Saturday game in the Super Regional, I would assume. We're going to talk about every single regional, some of the bigger storylines from it all. We'll come back when we talk about West Virginia in a little bit, coming out of the Tucson Regional, and preview a little bit on the West Virginia LSU series. But first, before we get to the rest of the regionals, the NBA Finals tip-off this week, we're giving away $100 cash and $100 in a gift card to the listener who wins our NBA Finals prop contest. Head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NBA Finals to enter. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NBA Finals. The NBA playoffs are here, and our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, wants to make it a lot more interesting for everybody involved. Underdog is available in 30-plus states, including California, Texas, and even Canada. They also just launched their Champions Player versus Player format in Florida. They're legal for drafting in Michigan. So sign up today with the promo code TCE-SGPN to claim your special pick, plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code TCE-SGPN. Okay, So I think we're going to go through the Monday regionals that finished here today. Then we'll touch on some of the ones that finished on Sunday, in order of like best story, most prevalent, hottest topic. I think we've got to go over to Stillwater, the Stillwater regional between the Swamp Water and the Stillwater, Florida, Oklahoma State, the regional final game here that took place on Monday. Throughout this regional, I was pretty against Florida being even live because the first game they had playing against Nebraska and Brett Sears, I thought Sears would be able to put Florida into the losers bracket, and they wouldn't really be able to prevail with some of the pitching issues that they have depth-wise. They win that game against Sears, and honestly, just clutch hitting was the name of the game for Florida the entire weekend. Ashton Wilson broke out this weekend, and they go into the winner's bracket game against Oklahoma State. Brian Holiday absolutely deals. Jack Caglione gets touched up quite a bit. Oklahoma State hitting some big hits and timely moments in that game, but it did not continue for the Pokes the rest of the regional in the two other games against Florida, where Florida came out of the losers bracket, knocks them off Sunday night, and then again Monday night to come through Stillwater. And now they'll face an old foe over at Clemson. We'll touch on that in a little bit. But Johnny, your reaction coming out of the Stillwater regional here, Oklahoma State and Florida.
Oklahoma State was another region I picked, plus 135. I thought it was good. OK State had three really good starting pitchers. They had a couple guys at the pen. They had an offense that could score. They were home. They're going to finally get rid of the notion that they can't get past a regional in this decade. But at the end of the day, man, I'll give it up for Florida. Give them their flowers. They're one of the best programs in the country every year for a reason. They're very well coached. And, I want to clear something up. I wasn't against Florida getting in because they're not talented. I didn't want them to get in because they're talented, because I knew if they get in, they could pull that bullshit like Ole Miss did 2 years ago, where you barely get in, you don't deserve to get in, and then you go on a run. And at the end of the day, Florida is capable of doing that because they have talent up and down their lineup, and when they perform, they'll hang with anybody. It was all off merit. You win you're one game over 500. You get swept at Mizzou. You lose first round in the SEC tournament. You lose like 5 of your last 6 series. You lose a ton of midweek games. You're a bad pre-conference. I personally didn't think they deserved to get in over a team like College of Charleston. RPI is all bullshit. Strength of schedule, fine, whatever. But you know what, man? Like, that's why I was afraid of Florida, because I ended up taking a ticket on them. I ended up taking a ticket because I'm like, watch what's going to happen. I have a feeling that they might come out here. And, ultimately I did go Nebraska game while Brett Sears because I thought it was a great matchup. And, at the end of the day, Florida just they came up more clutch. They made more plays at the end of the day. But there's no excuse for Oklahoma State, man. 2 games in a row, they scored 2 runs. Elimination game today, they scored 2 runs. I think a lot of the fundamentals are not being taught at the game anymore. Everybody's trying to hit a home run. Everything's all about launch angle and exit velo and all this crap, when in reality, the game is about getting runners on, getting them over, getting them in. Line drives and base hits are fine, but everybody's not content with a hit unless it's a home run, and I think that's a problem. And I think Florida's going to be a handful for Clemson. I think Florida now has a little momentum here, and this is a team that has a lot of grit and has a lot of talent and can go hang with anybody. So I think the Gators are going to be live the rest of the way, and they proved it to themselves that they should be here.
And for what it's worth, I mean, what you said about the game's philosophy just changing a little bit. I mean, Florida's been at the forefront for that. This is now the second year in a row that they really kind of rely on the big hit, the long ball. Last year, that's what got them to the College World Series finals. And this year, I mean, another reason why I doubted them was because there's a lot of swing and miss in this lineup. And they're without 2 of their bigger sticks, and Ty Evans and Hayden Yost this season. So, yeah, that was one reason why I really doubted the Gators. But they proved me wrong, and I'm happy because now I get to cheer them on another weekend because I'm a big fan. But at the same time, they crushed one of my bigger national championship tickets, and if they move on after the Super Regional, they might crush another one of my biggest national championship futures tickets here. Another big regional that ended today at this game took place at noon. the Greenville Regional. America's team, Evansville, the 4 seed, the 9th 4 seed to ever come out of the regional since this NCAA tournament tournament format was created in 1999. 9th ever 4th seed to come through. I mean, they beat East Carolina with Zach Root on the mound in game 1. They beat East Carolina with Zach Root on the mound for most of the game in game 7. Just the matchup there was pretty favorable for Evansville. The offense is not to be messed with. That's a real deal, especially the 1-2 punch in Fujarus and Schallenberger. And I definitely screwed up the first kid's last name, but that's going to come with time as we continue to watch this great story unfold with the Purple Aces. This regional was full of interesting games. I mean, you had the Chase Burns, Trey Savage game in the losers bracket on Saturday morning. That one, the pitching matchup, I guess, didn't really live up to the hype with Chase Burns getting knocked around a little bit. Trey Savage was an absolute dog going 7 deep on, just a week after a partially collapsed lung. That was really impressive from him. East Carolina almost gives that away in the 8th and 9th innings there against Wake. And then they knock out Wake. East Carolina is always a great program to root for. Their story's outstanding. And it's always a tough time seeing them get eliminated because the press conferences are always emotional. That team, they wear their hearts on their sleeves. Just seeing a couple of the clips come across my timeline today, it always hurts when East Carolina gets eliminated because that's one of the best baseball schools in the country. And Johnny, your thoughts, 1, on Evansville coming out of the Greenville Regional, 2 on the Greenville Regional as a whole?
You know what? I had Wake coming out of this region, and I looked at Evansville and I really thought about it. But the reason I didn't take them was I simply just played out the scenario that I thought was most likely to happen. I had Evansville beating ECU in the first game. I thought they had the matchup advantage. I thought the line was way too big. Money line and run, that was actually like one of the 2 of like the 3 winners I had on the Friday slate. But the reason why I didn't take Evansville to win the region was because I played it out as Wake Forest should get past VCU, throw David Falco, you get him out of the way, and Wake Forest pitching was great that game. They let him 1 run.
Yeah. And it hasn't been for the last 3 weeks when they throw that ball.
How are we supposed to know Wake Forest is going to give up 1 run and not score against VCU? Guys like Nick Kurtz playing in that bandbox, Seaver King. So that threw a whole wrinkle into it. Evansville, I felt like was going to create a wrinkle, but
Wake
here's
Forest,
the thing, right?
In the small park, they really didn't hit one of those big ones.
No, they didn't. So Evansville won, right? Which is what I thought was going to happen. But had Wake Forest won like they should have, then Chase Burns was going to get Evansville in that game. Then they probably go 2-0. And then, you got Hartle, you got Massey, you got a couple other guys to try and close it out. And that was just going to be too much for Evansville. But obviously, once Wake lost that first game, everything got thrown into a blender. At the end of the day, that's what happened. But, I'm really happy for this Evansville team. I had a chance to watch them play when they went against Mississippi State in the first couple weekends of the season. And I saw this team's for real. At Dudy Noble, they were giving a little bit of a fight to the Bulldogs. And, one thing I've been looking at all day, I think Evansville's got a shot to go into Knoxville game 1 and upset the Volunteers.
Yeah,
I don't think they'll win the series.
Tweet that out.
I don't think they win the series, but I'm going to probably take what's going to be likely a 4.5 run line. I'm going to probably hit the money line too, and I'll tell you why. Kenton Deverman is a dog. The Evansville ace is a stud. I think he's got 6 quality starts in his last 7 appearances. He gives you a lot of innings, and the Tennessee offense, I've been saying it all year, has struggled against quality starting lefty pitching. Like, you look at their splits, and Tennessee, it looks like they do really well against lefties. But a lot of their losses where they just have not been able to hit or even get like consistent base runners has been against guys like Liam Doyle of Ole Miss, Garrett Gainey, Charlie Goldstein of Georgia. Like, they hit. I mean, just Georgia blew them out of the water with offense. But I think now you get like a Kenton Deverman who can spin 7 strong, keep them off balance with his really good repertoire. And I think that's an opportunity for Evansville to go steal game 1. I definitely think they're going to be live.
So I'm looking this up currently against left-handed pitching.
The stats are going to say otherwise, but that includes like midweek. That includes relievers.
I'm diving into the specific players too. So against left-handed pitching, their OPS is only 10 points lower. They actually have a higher batting average against left-handed pitching. Amick with a 10.06 OPS against lefties. Burke with a 9.96. He's actually been pretty good against lefties. Stark had an outstanding weekend for Tennessee. We'll get to that in a little bit. He's got an 11.58 OPS against lefty. Christian Moore with an 11.93 OPS against lefty. Dalton Bargo 12.78. So it's your intuition here with Deverman. He had an outstanding day against East Carolina. We'll see if that continues against Tennessee. But yeah, I mean, if you're getting 3.5 or 4.5, and this Evansville team, the last time we saw a hot Indiana team go into the Knoxville in a super regional when Tennessee was the number 1 overall seed, Notre Dame knocked them off 2-3, and they won game 1. They won game 3. So it's not the most far-fetched thing in the world. They're predicting.
That's why I'm saying the stats aren't going to support what I'm trying to say, but I've seen it on multiple occasions. And then we'll point another one out. Alabama when they threw Greg Ferrone against Tennessee. Greg Ferrone was in control most of that game. I mean, it's a situation where there's 3 to 5 examples of like Tennessee's offense being shut down or neutralized, where it's become enough of an eye-opener for me. And LSU was kind of the same way last year. LSU, for as great as they were, they had some outings where when they were facing a good lefty starter, they had a tough time. And because there's so many games and it counts towards relief pitchers and midweek, and obviously you're going to get some slapdicks in there, but there's a handful of guys that are able to go in there and maybe make a difference. And you're going to get a huge number with Evansville. Ultimately, I think Tennessee is going to win the region because it's just too good of a matchup at home. But it wouldn't shock me to see Evansville go in and hit a huge plus money banger.
Hey, I mean, if you just bet them, if you bet them every game, just putting it out there. This is the same thing that I did when I felt really good about Notre Dame against Tennessee 2 years ago. One money line bet on all 3 games. All you need them to do is just take one of the 3 games, and you're coming out positive. So that's a great strategy entering the Knoxville Super Regional that's soon to be. I mean, I doubt that the NCAA flips that thing around from the number 1 overall team and gives Evansville a Super Regional host. Everything's not set in stone, confirmed, but we feel pretty good about the at least top 16 seeds getting the host. And I don't think there's any super regional without a top 16 seed. So we're not going to see something like an Oregon Oral Roberts last year or a Tennessee Southern Miss where there's 2 teams bidding against each other. So yeah, that shouldn't be an issue this year. Before we get to all the other regionals, if you're betting on NBA player props, then you need to download Rhythm. Rhythm gives you the best menu of player props for every single NBA playoff game, making it easy to go through and find the best props to put your money on in seconds. Rhythm's predictions are backed by over 3 years of AI data. You can also create your own custom NBA models so you can get AI-backed moneyline spread and total picks for every single playoff game. From superstars to bench players, Rhythm finds the best player prop lines, all backed by AI data without you needing to endlessly scroll a sportsbook. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. We're also brought to you by Naira. Bet the Belmont Stakes at Saratoga with Naira Bets. Join now to claim your $25 free bet and $200 deposit bonus just in time for the Belmont Stakes at nairabets.com/SGPN25. Remember, to get your $25 free bet and $200 deposit bonus for the Belmont Stakes, go to nyrabets.com/SGPN25. Okay, take your pick with either one of these last 2 regionals that finished up here on Monday. The Corvallis Regional with Oregon State against UC Irvine, or currently in the Norman Regional, UConn leads Oklahoma in Game 7, 6-0, going into the 7th inning.
Oregon State was a team I talked about all year. They were my preseason top 8 to make Omaha. And, they're 2 wins away from doing so. And I really liked what Oregon State had to offer this year. I felt their lineup, top to bottom, was going to be one of the best in the country. And that's what we saw for the first few weeks. But they've been battling injuries all year. And right now is pretty much the first time they've been fully healthy since maybe early March. Their pitching, I think, is good enough. If Aiden May, who's been awesome as a transfer from Arizona, can continue to do what he's doing. Jacob Kamatz keep doing his thing. Get a couple big performances from guys in the bullpen. Oregon State didn't really have to go up against any heavy hitters. UC Irvine's a solid mid-major program. Won a lot of games in the Big West this year, have a really good starter. They were ranked top 25 for a little while. But I just want to say how Oregon State is a team that I believed in all year. And I think they have a really good shot to go into Kentucky and take that super regional from them because, listen, Kentucky's had a great year, and I feel like all of us have been surprised by it. But they didn't look that impressive this weekend. Maybe they played down to their competition and they thought they were just going to skate right through it. But, they almost blew a 10-0 lead to Western Michigan. Indiana State, they won 5-0. It wasn't that impressive either. So I feel like Oregon State's got a really good shot here to go get it done and make their way into Omaha.
All right. And then I'll take I had Oregon State in my preseason Omaha 8. It's just a testament to the job that Canham's done with the Beavers this year. They battled a shitload of injuries in that lineup, and even they were missing their ace, Aiden Major, for a period of time during the season, and they still got a top 16 seed. Now they're going to the Super Regionals, and they're playing with nothing to lose, I truly think. So, yeah, I'll take the Norman Regional. I tweeted out on Saturday when UConn was about to upset Oklahoma. This is the tweet verbatim. UConn has been the no doubt biggest surprise to me in this year's NCAA tournament, and it continues as they're up 6-0 in the bottom of the 7th against the Sooners right now. The Huskies, this was my opinion on the team. I labeled them early as kind of just an overrated team going into Big East play because they looked miserable in the non-conference slate. When they were hitting the road, they were scheduling well. They played a tournament down in South Florida. They played a couple of weekends in California. I think they even played Auburn. They played one of those SEC schools down in the South in a midweek in a weekend series. Sorry, they went 8-15 in their games away from Stores. They in the first 2 games they only allowed 1 run through 16 innings against Duke and Oklahoma. I think it finished with they only gave up like 3 runs in those first 2 games. Game 3 for them, they gave up 6 to Oklahoma. So they've held the 3 teams that they played, the 4 games that they played under 10 runs in those 4 games. Super impressive pitching performance from UConn. The question still, I think, has remained a little bit on the offense, but today they've showed some power potential. They've blasted 2 home runs. So just a really impressive weekend from Hook C overall. The Huskies, going into Florida State, where we've seen Florida State's pitching have some cracks. Like if they can bring the bats, they've got a shot. But, this has been a very impressive weekend from UConn. Let's go to some of the bigger finals that ended up on Sunday. We're going to start off with the Tucson Regional. Randy Mazey in his last year with West Virginia was kind of being overshadowed by Coach Gary Gilmore in Coastal Carolina, which we'll touch on a little bit. But, with Gilmore with his national championship, Mazey flying under the radar with this West Virginia team, they get sent out to the region of death in the Tucson Regional with Arizona as the 1, Dallas Baptist as the 2. But in this regional final, it was the 3-seed West Virginia over the 4-seed Grand Canyon. In their own right had a very good story, not even being able to win their conference tournament championship. But they had ran away with the WAC regular season. They get, rolling with a win over Arizona. Then they're able to, beat Dallas Baptist in the losers bracket to get to this point. And West Virginia has been battling injuries all season long too. I heard Rooney on Squeeze Play say, like, hey, if you would have told Mazey that, JJ Weatherholt only plays about 25 games this season because he misses a couple with a hamstring issue, and you lose your closer for the year, like, and you were to say, like, hey, that's your final season, you'd have been like, oh shit, like, tough luck. but to be able to come out of a regional is just incredible. And I watched that press conference last night, and just it's outstanding from Mazey to be able to like put himself in the position that, he's been to super regionals. He's been to Omaha as an assistant coach multiple times. And he's like, I just want to do it for the kids. And in the press conference, those guys on the desk were just saying like, hey, they wanted to win these games for Mazey. And Mazey's like, well, I mean, they're saying that for me. They're the reasons why I want to get them to Omaha so they can experience that for themselves, because he's already done that. And I just think that's a tremendous story for West Virginia. And they brought out Derek Clark in the 9th inning to close this thing out when Grand Canyon was showing a little bit of fight in the 9th inning. Clark's a guy that threw a complete game, over 100 pitches on Friday, comes in for the final couple of outs. And it's news to me. I actually, previewing the team, I guess I didn't really even catch it, but Clark played for a D2 school, like an hour and a half away from me, played at Northwood University with the Timberwolves there. So just a really cool, story all around it going on in Morgantown right now. And they'll be heading down to Chapel Hill for a chance to win 2 games and head to Omaha. Johnny, your thoughts on this, Mountaineer run that was kind of not really predicted by many?
What's bullshit is last year I said I think I actually like West Virginia to do a little damage, and they don't do it. And then this year they decide that they're going to go to the Super Regionals. This regional this year reminded me a lot of what Oklahoma State had last year with DBU, Washington, and Oral Roberts. And you know what? Kudos to West Virginia. I had Dallas Baptist coming out of that regional, and then I had Arizona, and then I had honestly almost a tie between GCU and West Virginia. I didn't think they had the pitching depth, but when you get a complete game shutty or almost a complete game 1 run from your ace and gets you up 1-0, puts probably the most dangerous team in the region down 0-1. And I don't know if they had to face Arizona at all. I don't think they did.
No, they didn't.
That's definitely a big help, but it just goes to show, man, just get in and you never know what can happen. I've been saying this a lot of the times, bro. Like a lot of these teams that we're seeing that not only made the tournament but made the supers aren't necessarily the most talented teams in their regions, but they played the best fundamentals. They're the best coached. They don't do stupid shit to run themselves out of innings and give teams outs. And the teams that play smartest and cleanest are the ones that win, because it's basically a 2-game season in the regionals, and then it's a 2-game season in the super regionals. So, as long as you get in and you're able to make the right things happen in a couple games, things can go your way. And that's what West Virginia's doing. And I will say, I think I'm going to give them a shot here to go win game 1. I think Derek Clark, if he continues to throw the way he is.
If he throws game 1, too.
Yeah.
That's a little bit
if he throws game
mark.
1. If he throws game 1, I think I like depends what the number is, obviously. But West Virginia on the road, probably the advantage pitcher. Jason DeCaro threw 25, 30 pitches today.
True. Yep.
So I do think I probably would lean West Virginia, obviously, pending the number.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, let's talk. You just did it, but North Carolina, West Virginia is your super regional here. West Virginia's presumptively going to Chapel Regional for this weekend's games. Personally, I mean, I love the story, and Mac is one of my best buddies, that I've created here through the college experience. He's with our college basketball experience show. And I've been over to Morgantown. It was a great time. If I'm logically trying to pick this series, I just don't think West Virginia has enough pitching. It was just a dream scenario that played out in Tucson for them to dodge the 1 seed who had all the pitching. Grand Canyon had their ace against them, knocked them into the losers bracket, and they go 2 in barbecue. But they had Derek Clark shove. They had the best scenario for every one of their guys going to make that 3-game run. Because Mazey said if they played another game, they had nobody left. So, yeah, I mean, logically, if I have to pick the series, I have to take North Carolina here, because I think even Shea Sprague is able to, give North Carolina's lineup enough time to put a couple of runs up on West Virginia to get them a early win in the series. You're shaking your head.
I hate it. I hate this super regional because like I had a couple teams in LSU and Dallas Baptist in both respective regions with the ticket. And, I was hoping one of them could come out.
Yeah.
And, that wasn't the case. And now I have no skin in this. And, like, I don't want either team to advance, if I'm being honest. But I think West Virginia is the more beatable for teams that I have on the left side, with mainly being Florida State. UNC is a team I didn't really think was that good overall throughout the year because they didn't really beat anybody. They had a nice win at Duke in the last weekend. They were able to put it over on LSU in game one. And then, they just made one more play tonight. And, I think the pitching was always the big thing. Like, the lineup's no joke. Vance Honeycutt, I've been talking about him for the last 3 years. Like, I think personally, you can make a case he's the best player in the country. I think if it's not for him and his bad swing and miss, like this guy could be a future MVP in the major leagues if he figures out the swing and miss. He's that good. He is probably the most five-tool player in the entire college baseball landscape. But it was like the pitching, and I think their pitching has been good enough. They have some really good relievers. Mateus, Poston, Pence was nails tonight. And I guess their starters are solid enough with DeCaro and Chase Sprague and, whoever else they're trying to trot out there for a game 3. And I guess I'm a little upset because I didn't buy in on UNC at all. And, of course, it comes down to a 50-50 game tonight where they easily could have lost. But, they were like 40-1, 50-1 all year, and I didn't buy it on them. I feel like like an asshole right now.
Let's jump over to another regional that had a 3-seed, 4-seed regional final in Fayetteville. Kansas State just played with their hair on fire the entire weekend. Their first NCAA tournament appearance since 2013, and they made the most of it. On Saturday night, they put up 6 runs in 1 inning on Hagen Smith, and that was enough to get them through. The 1-seed Arkansas gets bounced down in the losers bracket, and nothing went right for the Razorbacks this weekend to finish the year. The last couple of weeks, as they lose to the 4-seed SEMO, who then goes to the regional final. Kansas State pulls off kind of the traditional sweep, beating the 2-seed, the 3-seed, the 2-seed, the 4-seed, and the 1-seed in this regional altogether. Highlighted by a couple of big pitching performances by Barema in game 1. And Wentworth came in and pitched well. Kalen Culpepper just had an outstanding weekend. He went 7 for 12, hit 583 in the 3 games, scored 5 runs, hit for the cycle in one of the games, had 7 RBI. That's a superstar shortstop that, could take over a regional, say, in Charlottesville next weekend. Johnny, your thoughts here from the Fayetteville regional?
First, say K-State, man, they came to play. They capitalized on their opportunities. K-State was one of my preseason 8 to Omaha. I felt like they got screwed last year and they were going to come out with a vengeance. And to be honest, I wasn't really in love with how they played all year, and I kind of gave up on them. And you know what? They got in a draw that was somewhat tough, having to beat Arkansas and Hagen Smith. That's not really a favorable matchup for anybody. And they blow up the best pitcher in college baseball for his worst outing of the season. And a big reason was because Kalen Culpepper. Kalen Culpepper is the least talked about superstar in college. He's the guy who is going to be one of the top shortstops off the board, and nobody talks about him. He's a bona fide first rounder, and I think he's just continued to prove how great he is. So I'm happy K-State's in, and I do think they have a shot. I think everybody's writing in Virginia in their own super regional, and Virginia did not look good this weekend. I don't care what anybody says. Had Mississippi State had any kind of coaching that has a brainstem in their head, that they would have won. Mississippi State should have won that series. I don't care what anybody says. And yeah, I did have a lot of money, and that's not why I'm saying it. I truly believed it because based on what I watched. But Arkansas, we saw it all year. What happens when they're pitching that's the best in the country, has 1 or 2 bad starts that, lets up 5 or 6 runs? Their offense wasn't good enough. We talked about this all year, that their offense wasn't going to be good enough. Maybe they had 1 or 2 games where, you know what, they were able to put up 8, 9, 10 runs and bail their pitching out. But no, consistently bad all year long. And it puts tremendous pressure on your pitching that you have to be damn near perfect.
Yeah, and I mean, this is kind of the monkey on the back of Hagen Smith. I mean, for the longest time, another really good lefty in the MLB had, not really lived up to the postseason pressure. 3 years for Hagen Smith in the NCAA tournament. His career ERA is 8.41. And
Clayton
I mean,
Kershaw.
really, just comparing lefty postseason struggle. That's tough. I mean, and Crutch talking about how they blew the 8-run lead against SEMO in game 1. And, Arkansas pitching kind of slumped at the worst possible time, kind of like me and my betting picks in college baseball this season. In Charlottesville.
Hold on. I want to say this real quick. SEMO in the elimination game obviously was a game that Arkansas needed to win and should win, given like the balance of power between both teams. And it's Arkansas's freaking regional. But SEMO's no joke, man. The first taste I got of SEMO was in the opening day when they played Dallas Baptist and faced Ryan Johnson. They touched one of the best pitchers in the game, Ryan Johnson, for 5 runs in 5 innings. And I'm like, God damn, this team shows up and they're ready to play, man. They're not afraid of anybody. So, you know what? Like, to me, that wasn't that surprising, given what I've seen from SEMO this year.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they were. I bet them on the run line in game 1 against Arkansas, and I got fucked because of the Arkansas rebound with the offense in the late innings. But I did believe in that team to be able to compete with Arkansas. I didn't bet it in the second game, and you know what? They win it outright. So just the way that this weekend went for me. But I mean, let's go to another regional that an amazing 1 versus 2 3-game series that it wasn't 3-game series. Sorry, but 1 versus 2 that we saw 2 thrillers. The second game, Virginia pulled away a little bit in the later innings, but in Charlottesville, I know Johnny, you had a lot riding on Mississippi State. They go in to Virginia. They're an extra innings in game 1 and game 2. They're tied going into the 8th inning. They lose it on both occasions. What did you see from the Bulldogs, and what's your viewpoint on how their season ended here?
I mean, Mississippi State was the first team I bet all year. In middle of January wildcard weekend when I was in Vegas at Caesars, I bet them at 175-1. I thought that was wrong. I thought Mississippi State was going to be good this year. And you guys remember me talking about it preseason on the podcast when I had everybody on Breaking Bet. I knew that the offense, and having watched them all year, I watched a lot of Mississippi State baseball this year, that their offense was good, but it wasn't that good. It was definitely a pitch-first team. I was very consistent in what I was saying, especially over the last month. I'm like, listen, their pitching is so good. If they're hitting, if their offense just averages, if they could just score 6 runs a game, this is going to be a team that's going to the College World Series finals because their pitching's got their back. Cal Steven, dog this year, first team all ACC. Durangelo Sanger was a dog this year. This is a kid that has made out of this world improvements. You got Nate Dom that was in and out. You had Pico Cone who had a great start the other day. But, the end of the day, man, they're not well coached. They don't do fundamentals right. They don't do the little things. Their hitting coach is atrocious. They strike out way too much. They don't run the bases well. Amani Larry was atrocious at second base all year, outside of a few really nice plays that are like, we forget how
he is competent.
He is. Yeah. And you know what, man? Like, it's just in the biggest moments they do the dumbest shit. And that's ultimately what came down. Like, they had opportunities in both games to win. And of course, like, Dakota Jordan woke up and he was great this weekend, but it wasn't enough. And it was really a shame. And then, at the end of the day, Tyler Davis comes in the 3-2 game, top of the 9th, and they kept him in, and he walked the whole park. But what killed me was Dakota Jordan stealing second base with Hunter Hines up. Hunter Hines is your big hitter. And yeah, he's been struggling, but he had a double earlier in that game, and he steals second base and he slides over the bag, and that's the end of the inning. That was a microcosm of their season.
Yeah, that was tough. I mean, I want to go to Virginia here and give them their flowers too, because they pitched their asses off this weekend, and we had never seen Virginia really kind of pitch that well coming into the NCAA tournament. And it was all just kind of highlighted and capped off by Jay Wolfhook, who's been a reliever for all his career, first 2 seasons. This year he started off as a starting pitcher. It didn't really work early on in the season. But Brian O'Connor stuck with him, kind of like how we've seen Jay Johnson stick with Thatcher Hurd the last 2 years. He comes back with Jay Wolfhook in game 3 of the regional because he knows the potential and the stuff is there. And Wolfhook absolutely shines in like one of the bigger moments that this team's had all season long, with a stellar performance. So yeah, that was a big takeaway that I had for Virginia. Like if Wolfhook's able to pull off like a similar Thatcher Hurd type, finish to the season here for Virginia, that's something to keep in mind. As Virginia with Joe Savino, who has come back and he's healthy and he's pitching all right, and Evan Blanco, who's pitching great, and they've got all the recycled starting pitchers that have kind of filled in the roles and not looked great, but they've have experience going long innings here with an excellent offense, a top 10 offense WRC plus wise. Like Virginia all of a sudden looks like one of the better contenders, especially when you draw a 3 seed in Kansas State, who has had a shaky season throughout and one good weekend. Like Virginia all of a sudden could go to Omaha for the 3rd time in 4 years. And the Who's, the Omaha Who's, they're looking
let me
poised for another run.
Let me say this. First of all, fuck Virginia. I can't stand Virginia. Number one. Number two, let's be honest here. Their offense wasn't that good. Mississippi State pitching really did well in the 2 games that they played. They really did well. Jay Wolfhook shutting down Mississippi State for 8 innings, 2 runs should tell you everything about this Mississippi State lineup. They had so many opportunities to score, and they shit the bed. It's not that Jay Wolfhook's that good. Like a guy who is a setup/closer who's solid in that role, who is a failed starter over the last few seasons, comes in and dots you like prime Justin Verlander. That's a problem for Mississippi State. And I think that speaks more of volumes to how bad their offense was. Because when you hold Virginia, I mean, okay, fine. The last inning for Mississippi State got away from them, and that looks like it was a lopsided game at 9-2. But really, like you hold Virginia to 5 runs and less in 2 games, you should win, given how bad their pitching is. And especially the bullpen. The bullpen is the worst part of the whole thing. I don't know. I don't think they scored a run off the bullpen in 2 games. That's more about it. And Virginia's offense is the real deal. Their lineup top to bottom is the real deal. No doubt about it. But like the pitching's not that good. And of course, now they get one of the easier draws you could get in K-State. And who knows, maybe Kalen Culpepper comes ready to play again and they could put up some runs on Virginia's pitching. But now you get an easier matchup. But yeah, Virginia is going to probably go to Omaha, and they're probably going to be one of the Final 4 teams. Likely.
Yeah. So we've talked about 8 super regionals in depth. We're going to each trade off on 1 super regional each here. The 8 remaining that we have: Bryan College Station Regional, Tallahassee, Clemson, Knoxville, Athens, Santa Barbara, Lexington, and Raleigh. Apples, oranges, tomato. I'm going to start us off here. I'm going to take the Clemson Regional because, of course, I've been one of the louder voices on this team being super solid all season long. I think they've flown under the radar. They're a very talented bunch. They've got guys that come through in the clutch every single game. I mean, the 25 comeback victory speaks for itself. And I'm a huge fan of Bakich and just watching him excel at another stop once again is tremendous. I mean, just him jumping on the outfield wall and celebrating with the fans was an awesome sight. I mean, they ran away with that regional final game against Coastal Carolina. They had trouble with High Point early. They pull off the comeback victory there. The second game between Coastal and Clemson was amazing. But the third game, where Clemson hadn't hit a home run until the regional final game, they just have so many ways to win offensively, and they can mix and match with that bullpen. Clemson, I think, is a real threat to not only get to Omaha, but win a national championship. Johnny, I know you disagree with me because you said that Florida's got a good chance to come in here. Before I talk about that super regional, I want to talk about, Gary Gilmore and his swan song. He rode off into the sunset. After the game, he ripped into NIL, ripped at the shreds. That was awesome. It was about 9 minutes long. I encourage you guys to go and watch him, his final media appearance, probably publicly at least, before he retires. And Coastal Carolina is a team that's in good position once again next year. Like, this team was very young when you're talking about the pitching staff. They had multiple injuries in the pitching staff. A couple of the guys that they acquired through the transfer portal didn't even get to appear in this season. Gary Gilmore is talking about it. That they've set this program up to not only succeed next year, but years to come. And the super regional, Clemson, Florida, we all know the storyline with Eric Bakich and Kevin O'Sullivan being assistant coaches on Jack Leggett's coaching staff way back when at Clemson. Leggett's now an assistant with Bakich on Clemson. Kevin O'Sullivan coming in with the Florida Gators. They were preseason number 2 overall ranked. And, I think Clemson's very excited, looking forward to this, very one of the more super regional series that's going to have a lot of attention on it, for lack of a better term. Johnny, take another super regional here. You can go with Bryan College Station, Tallahassee, Knoxville, Athens, Santa Barbara, Lexington, or Raleigh.
Save that Georgia one for me, but right now I'm going to go talk about the Florida State region. I'm very proud of and impressed by the Seminoles' resilience. UCF comes out last night and punches them in the mouth. They don't panic. Connor Whitaker was very good. One mistake to Jack Ziska, actually alumni of my high school. So he really tried to bend me over on that one. And then ultimately the pitching was just good. And I think I was very impressed more by the pitching from Florida State this weekend. They faced a couple teams that could hit in Stetson and UCF, and ultimately they delivered. Carson Dorsey was fantastic. I think it's not an exaggeration to say he might have saved their season, because if he came out in game 1 and shit the bed, then we don't know how that weekend goes. Ultimately, Florida State is a team that was kind of right there with Mississippi State in terms of like my biggest futures. And Florida State was a team that I was high on coming into the year. You remember me saying that. I didn't have them as a College World Series winner because I needed to see how the pitching went. You didn't know you were going to get this kind of performance from Arnold. Want to see what Leiter looked like. But it was a team I was believing that was going to be a lot better in year 2 under Link Jarrett. Now they're going to get the winner of UConn, Oklahoma, which looks like UConn. I think it's the matchup I would have wanted. I probably wouldn't have wanted to play Oklahoma. UConn, I think, has performed really well, but I don't think Oklahoma or Duke is on the level of Florida State, if I'm being honest. And now if Florida State at home can take care of UConn, then they're probably going to draw Tennessee in the first round of Omaha. Same theory with Evansville. Jamie Arnold, game 1. And this is not a series. So all Florida State has to do with Jamie Arnold on the mound is beat Tennessee in Omaha, where it's not a launching pad. Then they go into the winner's bracket. Yeah. And now you start 1-0. Now it's a completely different matchup in game 2.
I agree with you more on the Jamie Arnold side of things than the Kenton Deverman side of things. Arnold has done it whoever he's facing this season. The ACC is a very offensive league, and he's shut down offenses every single weekend except for Pitt. So that's my opinion there. I do. I mean, if it's Florida State, UConn, again, I have to continue to stick with my intuition and doubt UConn and go with Florida State, the team that I've kind of believed in more. I had them going to Omaha. I just thought, like, there's also a tragic Magic story here as well that you didn't touch on, with Mike Martin passing away this offseason.
True.
I mean, they've got, power from above as well, helping them out. As Link Jarrett, he was at the forefront. Like, he played for Mike Martin, but at the hands of he loses the 44 year in a row postseason streak. And in last night's press conference, he was like, we made the decision not really to celebrate this regional final championship because there's an empty spot over there in the trophy case that we want to fill. And I just think, like, if you have that mentality after as bad of a year as they had last year, I mean, we saw him hit the transfer portal super hard. We see this team, they've completely flipped in mentality and success. Florida State's a true threat in Omaha this year. I'm going to take you guys to College Station. That regional was kind of decided for me Saturday night. We had an outstanding matchup between Texas A&M and Texas. Ryan Prager goes for a bulk of that inning, or a bulk of that game. Texas A&M finally looks like they have their swagger back offensively after a couple of slumpish weeks. We still haven't really seen that big Braden Montgomery breakout game again, like we did with Dakota Jordan earlier this weekend, where he went 5 for 5 against St. John's. But if everybody else around Montgomery is hitting, he's only going to have more chances to come around and see some success to finish off this year. But I mean, the Texas A&M Texas game was outstanding. I mean, bubbles galore. That helped them rally back as pitching through bubbles. Gage Bame throws a wild pitch, and they're able to tie the thing up. Or it might have even been take the lead at that point. But just an outstanding weekend of baseball in College Station. Texas A&M looks like, in my opinion, the one of the biggest favorites to win the national championship this year. And they went through a region with Texas, their bitter rival, and Louisiana, who's an excellent baseball school. And they really, outside of the Texas game on Saturday, they blew the doors off of Grambling in the second inning. And then Louisiana, they hit a couple of big hits, big bombs, and they kind of ran away with that one without any kind of sweat. So Texas A&M, pretty stress-free outings from most of their pitchers outside of Prager. We know Prager's going to bounce back. I just think it's going to be a big breath of fresh air for Texas A&M outside of the SEC. Both Justin Lampkin, Tanner Jones, and we all know that Shane Sadeo and Ashenbeck over there has been amazing for them out of the pen, and Sadeo has been recently starting. So Texas A&M, I think, is a true threat to win it all in Omaha. So, Johnny, 6 more regionals that we want to just touch on real quick. We have you actually said that you wanted the Athens regional. So go ahead.
I'll do the Athens.
Georgia Tech.
First off, I'm really upset at myself because I fucked up here. I remember when Georgia was trending deep into the futures territory, probably past 80-1, sometime early April, late March. And I was like, I don't think Georgia's going to win it all because at the end of the day, they can't pitch. But I saw on Bet Rivers to make the College World Series, they were 25-1. And I thought about it hard, and I didn't fire on it. And obviously, at the time, you can't know that they're going to get a cupcake draw. Yeah, at the time, they didn't look like a host team, let alone a top 8 national seed. But now I wish that I had at least to put it in the pocket because now I could hedge that off real nice. But in any case, I think my preseason and early season intuition on the Bulldogs was right. Despite being maybe the top offense in the country, second, possibly behind Tennessee, at the end of the day, they cannot pitch. Their bullpen is not good. They have a couple okay arms. Their starters aren't that good. I have no idea if Charlie Goldstein's ever going to make a big start again. I mean, the guy, I guess, has been hurt, and he's been out for most of the second half of the season.
He appeared this weekend, and he exited with soreness again.
Yeah, I know. For like five seconds he was in. And I think that's a big loss because for a team that doesn't have much pitching, he was the one guy that, like, on any given Friday, he could come out and give you like 6 innings, 3 runs, straight quality start style. But now you look at it, like they struggled with Georgia Tech last night. They struggled with Army the first day. It's a team that, because you can't pitch, now you're facing much better competition. And NC State's no joke, man. I remember talking about this maybe like a couple weeks before the tournament started. Or
go ahead and just take Raleigh if you want to too. Branch off in the Raleigh if you want.
What do you mean?
About NC State. Like, if you want to talk about NC State real quick, go in their regional if you want.
Yeah, so like NC State, basically, I felt pretty good about winning their region. That was one of my picks because, obviously they were hot. And I think the fact that they got blown out by Duke in the ACC tournament was going to kind of relight the fire under them. They needed to get their ass beat just to kind of refocus and recenter. And they had a winnable draw. But ultimately, I kind of felt like NC State was a team that I was looking at 66-1. And but I wanted to wait on them because I wanted to see if they were going to host, like what their position was going to be, who would they match up with? Because, for all I know, they could have been the 16 seed and would have had to go to Knoxville. And then I'd be like, oh, well, fuck. I don't like that. But I think the pitching for NC State is going to be the reason why they win. I think the offense for NC State is not as good as Georgia's, but they can match up. They can hit nukes in that stadium down there in Athens. And, if they get some good performances from Sam Highfield, Dom Fritton, and a couple of the other guys, I think they're ultimately going to win this, and you're getting that as a dog too. So I believe the Wolfpack is going to go to Omaha here.
I'm going to take the Lexington Regional next up. I mean, Kentucky, they sweep through it. They a traditional sweep. They beat the 2-seed Indiana State, 3-seed Illinois on Saturday, and the 4-seed Western Michigan. The first game, Western Michigan, this is the real weakness, I think, of Kentucky. If you're looking at one hole to poke right now, is they don't really have the solidified rotation. I mean, you look at Dom Nyman and anybody else that they're trying to fill in the whoever's starting the third game. But I mean, Trey Poozer and Mason Moore have been, Trey Poozer's been excellent this year. Mason Moore really showed up again in the regional final. On Saturday, he was battling a stomach bug, whatever that was. But he's now, 3 tournament appearances. He's pitched 20.1 innings in his career. He's allowed just 10 hits. He's had 18 strikeouts, no runs. I mean, Mason Moore has been incredible in the NCAA tournament. The defense is really good for Kentucky. That middle infield duo of Grant Smith and Emilian Pitre is, up there with some of the best in the country. And Kentucky, they're hosting Oregon State, and Oregon State coming into Lexington, where Big Blue Nation has really kind of come out and they've adopted the baseball team now, finally. So like they've got a passionate fan base over there in Lexington, and they're finally coming out to the baseball games. And Kentucky Proud Park was bumping this weekend. They had some close games early with Western Michigan and Illinois, but they prevailed, and they've done that all season long as people have doubted them in the SEC, and they end up being co-champ of the league. And Kentucky is a team that I wouldn't have. I would not want to be drawing them in a super regional right now because I think the job that Nick Mingione has done with Kentucky has been incredible. Second straight super regional for Kentucky. Nobody would have thought that 5 years ago with Nick Mingione at the helm. And he's just done an excellent job at just being able to build a roster at an SEC school that's not based in the South, that doesn't have warm weather in the early winter or in the late winter and early spring. So just really impressive job from Kentucky all around. For me, the regionals that we didn't kind of go in depth on, Knoxville, it was all business for Tennessee. They scored 34 runs in the 3 games in a natural sweep of the 2-seed Southern Miss in the regional final. They beat Indiana. They dismantled them in game 2 of that regional for them on Saturday night. And then they had early trouble with Northern Kentucky, but they pulled away late there. Causey really came in and settled down everything. And also we didn't touch on the Santa Barbara regional. I was totally wrong here in this regional. I had UCSB coming out of it as they entered the regional undefeated at home. Oregon, who they had beaten previously in the regular season, Oregon gets revenge. They beat them twice on the their home field. So shout out to the Ducks. They pitched incredibly. Kevin Sider with the complete game on against
Sunday.
UCSB on Sunday to get them that regional title was outstanding. So yeah, that's going to finish up our regional recap show. Johnny, of the 8 super regionals that we have kind of talked about how each team's gotten here, you're one team that you feel most confident about getting to Omaha. Who is it?
I mean, getting to Omaha, I don't know how you say it's not Tennessee. You get Evansville, and I do think Evansville is going to have a really good shot to win game 1 against the Vols, but I don't see how they lose this series. I mean, maybe the 1 seed curse prevails and throws just even more chaos into this sport we call college baseball. But I mean, I feel like the Volunteers, this is one of the few years I feel like the 1 seed has just gotten no resistance. I mean, the toughest team you face is Southern Miss. If you look at the Volunteers, look who they had to play. And obviously we would have expected East Carolina or Wake Forest. Everybody was hoping for that Chase Burns return to Tennessee rematch. But at the end of the day, I think Tennessee has the easiest path. Now, if they get there, like, what do they do? Does this curse prevail? Do they run into Florida State game 1? Jamie Arnold takes them down, and now they're going to have to play on the back foot, and they might have to play Virginia or UNC, teams that they're very capable of losing. And now what? You're in Omaha. It's a much different feel. The ball doesn't fly out of Omaha the way it does in Knoxville. You could still hit home runs. You got guys that could put it out, but those routine pop-ups that should be out, that are home runs there, are going to be outs in Omaha.
Yeah, for the sake of being different, I think the correct answer is Tennessee with them getting Evansville. They have some ghosts to overcome in the super regional round against a hot Indiana team, but I think I'll end up going to the matchup that I think I like the most with this North Carolina offense against the West Virginia pitching staff. I think North Carolina, the Tar Heels, have a very, very good shot. I think that's probably your second largest favorite in the super regional market to get into Omaha. Johnny, anything else that you want to include for the show here? And if not, go ahead and plug some of your stuff and whatever content that you have coming out before super regionals and before Omaha. I
do want to point something out. Maybe it was just a regionals thing, but I feel like there's a lot of big underdogs this weekend that I feel like are gonna bark. They might not win outright, but they're gonna keep things close. I think Oregon's being vastly underrated here. I do think A&M comes out of this. I had Oregon beating UC Santa Barbara. Their pitching has been fantastic, and I know Texas A&M has an elite offense, but if you really look at it, Braden Montgomery hasn't been great. Lavalette struggled. I think he was 2 for 11 this weekend, had 1 RBI and 2 runs. He hasn't homered in like 8 games. Gavin Grohovic's been pretty solid. But like the fact is, if Oregon's pitching continues to go the way it has been and turns this into just a sloppy grudge match where you're going to have to, score maybe 3 runs to win, then I feel like we're in a situation where that could happen. And honestly, same thing with West Virginia. If West Virginia goes into UNC game 1 as a big underdog potentially with Derek Clark on the mound, and he finds a way to get game 1.
I'm going to doubt that he starts that game.
Well, maybe. But whichever game Clark throws, whether it's 1 or 2, I think that's where I'm back in WVU. I think a lot of these underdogs are going to have the opportunity to keep it close. So, I do feel like if you're able to get some 2.5 run lines on these teams, especially early in the week, I do think we're going to see more games like we saw today in the super regionals. Just so much more matters, and teams are playing with their backs against the wall, and I feel like it's going to be a little bit lower scoring and very tight this weekend overall.
I'm going to pull up exactly how many pitches Clark threw, because I think there's a very good shot that we see Swidolski throw the first game. Derek Clark threw 101 on Friday against DBU, and then he only threw 11 against Grand Canyon. So it kind of just depends on the draw, I think, because I guess you could chalk that up as a bullpen. If they get the Saturday draw where the series begins, then there's no doubt that he'll throw game 1. So maybe I'm wrong
about Derek Clark. Can we talk about Derek Clark real quick? Right. So this is his These are his last. This is his starting from March 30th. 9 innings against Oklahoma State. 9 innings, 1 run. Next game, 9 innings, no runs. Next game, 9 innings, 4 earned. Blown up by Texas Tech, 5 2/3, 5 earned. 8 innings, 2 earned. 5 innings, 7 earned. 7 innings, shutty. 8 innings, 2 runs. Against Dallas Baptist, complete game, 1 run, and then in relief, 2/3, no runs. He's had 2 blow-up outings, but he's been great this year. And I think if you're getting any plus money with Derek Clark, even against a UNC lineup, I think he's proved that's a dog worth taking.
Yeah, I think that's a solid point. But I mean, like in counter, he's had to. I mean, they lost their closer for the year. They've had pitching injuries. Like they're a very thin staff. He's had to go deep in these games, and he's just adopted that mentality, and he's ran away with it. Been outstanding with it. And he wanted the ball on Sunday night in the 9th inning. Crutch says, based on my experiences, he's going to go game 1. It's still 7 days from his full outing and 5 days from an 11 pitch workout. Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to go and look, because I think I am wrong. I think he probably will go game 1. So yeah, the 11 pitches, that's just a bullpen.
What do you make that line at?
North Carolina, it also honestly depends if DeCaro goes, because Sprague's more of a pitch to contact guy.
Well, all right. Well, we'll make the line. Let's say Clark is going, right?
I would make the line at like North Carolina -160 to -175. I think it comes into that range.
In that case, you're getting potentially plus 124 to plus 135, 140. And I mean, my point is this, right? We've seen a lot of close games, especially today. Expect more of the same this weekend for the most part.
I mean, for sure. You got some of these underdogs playing the best ball they have all season long. I agree with you on that point. So go ahead, plug whatever content that you're doing prior to the Super Regionals this weekend. Thank you very, very much for joining me on the show. It's now midnight Eastern, so I appreciate that. We ran a little bit long on today's show, but we wanted to hit on all 16 regionals and give some instant analysis prior to the beginning of their Tuesday morning here. Everybody on their drive to work. Johnny, go ahead, plug away anything that you want to.
Of course, I got my podcast, Breaking Bet. I will be back this week to talk about more of the Super Regionals and how to attack it via the bet. And, get up my Twitter at _JohnnyVTV. I live to argue, so if you want to talk shit, always down for it.
He's one of the best. He's one of the best at it. He's one of the best.
I love talking shit. I love complaining. I love gambling. And I love talking shit. And, of course, catch my articles on RotoWire. I'm going to have a couple coming out this weekend for the Super Regional plays.
Cool. Good stuff. Me personally will be doing daily episodes throughout the month of June when called for it. So in the middle of the week here, Tuesday, Wednesday, I might be hitting on some transfer portal, might be going over some storylines, maybe an interview. And Thursday, expect that picks show prior to all the games in series beginning on Friday. So thank you all for tuning in to this episode edition of Aces of Bases in collaboration with the College Baseball Experience, Breaking Bet, Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Our buddies with the NCAA Insiders weren't available for tonight, but we appreciate you all tuning in. We had a cumulative of 100 or over 330 tuned in on YouTube. We had 25 steady throughout the night. I mean, it's midnight East. Thank you all for joining this episode. We appreciate it. Adios, amigos.